Welcome to DevOps Info channel. Today I'm here to talk about the insider risk management, which is increasingly becoming critical for all the organization. In this video, I'm going to give you two important key takeaways. The first one is like what are the prerequisites and the readiness that you need to have before onboarding any environment into the Microsoft Purview insider risk management. This is both technical as well as in terms of the functionality, in terms of the process wise. So these are the things that you need to consider before onboarding any environment into the Microsoft Insider Risk Management. And the second one, what are the continuous improvement plan that you should have in order to benefit out of the Microsoft Purview Insider Risk Management solution. Having said that, I'm going to get into a little bit summary of what are the threats that we are aware of most common. Like if you talk about any organization, the first one is like we see protecting our environment from the external threats. Let's talk about an adversary who is targeting your environment. The first motive is to compromise the credential or access token. The moment when the first motive is accomplished, then they do a lateral movement, look for sensitive data in your organization, trying to exfiltrate. So this is the common external threat and adversary targeting in any organization. So most of the organization, what they do in order to overcome the situation, they have a very strong endpoint protection in place and endpoint detection and response enabled. On top of that, there is a very good network security in place. So do we think like protecting our environment only from the external threats is going to protect your sensitive data? If we still think like that, the answer is definitely no, because because the recent study revealed that 74% of the organization sensitive data is exfiltrated by the non-malicious insider employee in any organization. So the insider risk, having said that, the insider risks are more subtle and also they are dangerous. Like whether it's an employee accidentally uploading files to a personal storage or someone intentionally leaking data. These two can happen, right? Like when we talk about an unintentional, let's say a new HR intern joining your organization, he or her could accidentally upload like one of the most sensitive data. Let's talk about an organization restructure into their personal story to get insights about that file with a competitor. That could also happen. So that's like a potential data leak. And when we talk about the intentional an organization where an employee leaving, he could do a mass data exfiltration. That's most common thing which is happening in every organization. Unfortunately, these stuff are left, not that much detected, or like they are overlooked, or there is no proper detection mechanism in any organization, because we often focus on the external threats but we forget about the insider threats. So having said that, I also have one classification what we can talk about. Like we see always we always see like the biggest risk is only a hacker with a hoodie. Definitely not, that's not the case. It could be a well employee who is just doing a mistake in your organization or intentionally exfiltrating the data. Like if you talk about the insider threats, if I have just made a tabular column which you could see, like the insider threats originate within the organization, but the external threat of course originate from outside the organization. But if you talk about the insider threats, in most of the cases 74% are non-malicious, accidental, because a user needs a proper educational awareness program, or user is missing knowledge about how to use that functionality which is already available in your system. So these kind of stuff, the insider risk could definitely help in mitigating this to happen. But we'll talk about that in the last part. I have a very good two slides that would definitely help you in preventing the insider risk that's happening in your organization. Yeah. So usually if you talk about the insider risk, they're harder to detect with the traditional tools, because you need to invest additionally to have this kind of detection, that's this kind of data exploitation that's happening in your organization. And of course it often involves trusted users with access that's happening. So external threats, I don't need to talk about more, because we know it's typically malicious. It's caused by hackers or malware. The first one is like they try to send. The most common one is they try to send a phishing email, and then the first motive is to compromise the credential, or even over prompt injection attacks is happening a lot. So any kind of this could happen, and then the main motive is to exfiltrate the data. Yeah, of course, it's easier to detect with perimeter defenses, and it often involves phishing, ransomware, or exploits. All this stuff are the external threats. So, having looked into the classification between the insider and the external threats, I'm going to jump directly into the portal to show you what are the things that it can help in preventing this kind of insider risk. Excuse me. So the first and the foremost thing is I wanted to highlight again about the demo. Sorry, I want to highlight about the prerequisites and the licenses that you need to have for the solution. The first and the foremost thing is like you need to have the Microsoft 365 E5 that comes with an entire suite. Let's say if you don't have the Microsoft 365 E5, of course you can go with the Microsoft 365 E5 compliance add-on. Let's say if you have Microsoft 365 E3, then you need to procure an additional license of Microsoft 365 E5 compliance add-on. So yeah, you could negotiate which is best for your organization. Either it's better to go as a Microsoft 365 E5, or yeah, just get an add-on along with E5. Along with the Microsoft 365 E3, go with the if add-on. Yeah, that's your negotiation, and see like which is best for your organization. So the next thing, like what you need to do is in terms of the readiness, you need to make sure that your devices is having the connectivity from the Intune to the Microsoft Defender for endpoint. Because the reason why I'm talking about this is because with this Microsoft Insider Risk Management solution, you have two potential ways to prevent the data exfiltration. One, you could completely get the visibility on your endpoint and prevent the data exfiltration, and two, you could completely have a visibility on the Microsoft 365 apps and prevent the data exfiltration. So in order to prevent the complete data exfiltration from the endpoint, so it's always recommended to have your devices onboarded into the Microsoft Intune and have the connection established from the Defender from the Microsoft Intune to the Microsoft Defender for endpoint. I will show that you in a minute. If you see here, uh, how do you check that? You go to the Microsoft Defender, and at the bottom you see there is something called Defender for antivirus mode. Yeah, and another important thing is you need to have the Microsoft Defender for endpoint installed at least in passive mode, because this Microsoft Insider Risk Management is completely dependent on the Microsoft Defender for endpoint. So you need to have this at least running in passive mode. Let's say if your organization is already having Microsoft Defender for endpoint in active mode, well and good enough. You already met the first prerequisites. No need to worry about it. But let's say like if you are running a third-party antivirus, then you need to onboard the Microsoft Defender for endpoint at least in passive mode. In my case, I have it in active mode, so you see it like Defender for antivirus mode is in active, but yeah, at least you need to have it in passive mode. The next thing is like you need to come to the overview on the left side. I would show you a few more things like onboarding status is onboarded. That's good. And if you see here, you also have the DLP policy sync updated. This is also very important because all the policies, if you want to use the DLP policies in the Microsoft Insider Risk Management, there is an option which I would show you in the few minutes in the when creating the rules. So if you want to use your existing DLP policies, of course, you need to have the DLP policies sync updated over here. The next one I wanted to show is the policies itself. So, before going to the policies, the next one is like you need to have the devices onboarded with the Microsoft Purview, because Microsoft Purview, that's a place where we have the Microsoft Purview Insider Risk Management. So you need to make sure that your devices are visible in the Microsoft Purview portal. So in my case, of course, you see the configurations updated and the DLP policy sync is updated. This is very important. You need to have everything green over here. And the next important thing is like when we are going to talk about the solution itself. So when we talk about the solutions, there are two things. The first thing is like the global settings, and the second thing is creating the policies itself. So when we talk about the global settings, these are the things that you need to consider before creating the policies. Because when we talk about any enterprise, large organization, of course, there is huge possibilities of exception, huge possibilities of things that we need to exclude or more focus for any detection mechanisms. So this is the place, the global settings that you need to make sure you need to select all the parameters that's required for any organizations to start before creating the policies. I would show you a few of them that would be definitely helpful. So let's get started. So when we talk about the insider risk management settings, all you need to do is just come to the purview.microsoft.com and click on the analytics. The first thing is yes, you need to come to purview.microsoft.com and then you need to click look for the settings, and in the settings you need to look for the insider risk management settings. The first and the foremost thing is like you need to click on the analytics and you need to turn this on. Earlier, this used to be just only one toggle switch, but now Microsoft has given you option two. The reason being why is like you can gather insights in two options. Like one, show insights at the tenant level. I don't want to see the user visibility. Or the second option is show insights at user level. So it's up to you how do you choose it. But my recommendation is, yeah, maybe you can start with show insights at tenant level, and then eventually you can go to the show insights at user level till the down option. Yeah, but that's up to you how do you choose this. But this is very important to turn this on. The reason being why, because when you turn this on, this solution is going to scan in your Microsoft 365 environment and see what are the data exfiltration that's happened already in your environment, and going to give you suggestion what kind of policies that you can create. So this is very good, right? Because like instead of going and creating a policy and doing a reverse engineering look where the data exfiltration is happening, now the insider risk management has the option analytics. Yeah, it's there for quite a long time, but now you have these two options that's going to look into your tenant, do an initial discovery and see where the data exfiltration has happened, and after that it's going to give you a suggestion what kind of policies that you could create, which is well and good, right? And so after you turn this on, the important thing is like you need to wait for 24 hours for the inside risk management to do an initial analysis, and that would give you in the recommendations part. We'll look into that in a few minutes. And the next one is about the data sharing. In the data sharing, you have an option export alert details to SIM services and share user risk detail with other security solutions. Let's say if you want to do the if you want to utilize the Microsoft Defender for XDR, this option needs to be turned on. Or if you want to use any third party, yeah, you need to have this toggle switch turned on for the export alert details to SIM services as well. And the next part is like share user risk details with other security solutions. This is within the Microsoft itself. When you turn this on, your SOC team would be able to review enriched data. That's a combination of data loss prevention, communication compliance, and entity pages in Microsoft Defender. It will get more information from those solutions and give an enriched overview on the on the user risk details. That would really help your SOC team for a better understanding of what happened actually. Yeah. And there are a lot of things like detection groups and global exclusions. I'm not going to talk about a lot, but I would show, I'm going to talk a few things that might be helpful. Let's for example, when we come to the global exclusions, we have the domains part first. So when we talk about the domains, like, of course, in any organization there are few domains like you could consider as important, like let's say like if your organization is already having a sister concern, or a part working with a partner who is whom like this is a critical project that needs to be completed in couple of month time. So I don't want any kind of false positive that need to happen on that particular domain. Of course you can add the domains to exclude. That's possible. You have also another option like email signature attachments. This is very good. Like for example, when you send an email to your partner on any external vendor, when the email conversation goes back and forth, it starts adding up the signature all the way at the bottom, and this could potentially be identified as a false positive by the solution. So in order to avoid those kind of stuff, you have an option to turn on the switch. Of course, I highly recommend to turn this on. Um, Unless and otherwise you find any other specific use case, then you can exclude. And there are a lot of things like the file paths to exclude. If you know any file path that has been already identified as a false positive in the past, you could do that. You have the file types, keywords. There is quite a lot of thing. I highly recommend to go through all these settings. That's really going to help you. in creating a proper policy. The next part you come is the Microsoft Teams. This is a very nice option. When you turn on this toggle switch, every time when a case is created, an associated team will be created. This is really good, right? Because this is going to really help you, in better collaboration within the team, and then finding a faster resolution for any kind of incident that has been raised, especially with the insider risk in your organization. So I highly recommend to use this feature, yeah, which is coming at no cost. And the last but not the least, there is also something called privacy, which is nice. Like when we talk about the privacy, the moment when any kind of risk is identified in your organization, there is two options. The first one is like you can show this as a pseudonymized, which is like no user information is shown, like it says this is the data exfiltration that has happened. And the second one is like do not show pseudonymized version of username. This is something like the user information will be shown. So yeah, you need to play around with this because how your SOC team is set up, and like how you want to deal with the case management. So you need to understand how you're going to do with this part. I highly recommend the first thing is like you go with the pseudonymized, get the data, and after getting the data you should eventually improve the process in the data improve the process in detecting and finding the better resolution. And so for that you first start with the pseudonymized data, give a proper education awareness program, and then educate the users what are the best way to share the external what are the best ways to share the data with the external participant, and what are the best way uh, to use the tooling. So you start with pseudonymized. Later, like after a couple of months, you can go with the stricter policy. Do not choose pseudonymized version, but that's up to your organization how you're going to handle that. We'll talk about that. We'll touch about the topic in the last two slides, which would definitely help your implementation with the Microsoft Insider Risk Management. Having said that, I'm going to come into the solution itself. So when we talk about the solution, this is like creating the policies. So when you want to create the policies, the first and foremost thing is like you need to come and click on create a policy. So when you click on create a quick policy, there are default 6 policy templates. You see like the data leaks. For example, there is a data theft by users leaving your organization. This would detect the data theft when the user resignation based on their account like deleted from enter id. There is also an option to integrate with a third party crm system. So all those options are available. And also you see like the email exfiltration policy, there's a quite a lot. So I recommend to use them, or at least select them, and then you can go to the custom policy and you can create based on your requirement. I'm going to show you a few things that I already identified and that can help you in creating the policy. So for example, like I've just created one data leaks quick policy, and here I'm just going to edit this policy to show you what are things that you need to consider when creating a policy. So when you just create a policy, the first thing you see is like there is an option to integrate this with an existing DLP policy, which I talked about you in few minutes back, right? Let's say if your organization is already having a perfect DLP policy onboarded in Microsoft Purview, it's been utilized perfectly fine. Then you have an option to use them. You can choose the DLP policy and use it. I will show that to you in a few minutes. And the next one is like the devices onboarded. I highly recommend to onboard a device so that you also get the visibility of the data exfiltration that's happening in your endpoint devices. And another important thing which I want to say is like you need to have the Microsoft Purview extension add-on installed in your devices to detect the data exfiltration that's happening in the Chrome, Safari, or any browser that's not a Microsoft Edge. So in order to detect those, then you need to have the Microsoft Purview extension add-on installed in there. Yeah, and then you have the connect cloud applications, of course, in order to detect what are the data exploitation that's happening. You also need to do that. And the next part, you see the naming the policy. You need to keep in mind when you want to create a policy, create them according to your organization naming standard. At this moment, there is no option to edit the policy after you create it, even via the PowerShell or the Graph API or anything. Only thing is like you need to clone the existing policy, edit it, edit the name, and then delete the old one. So you need to keep that in mind. The next part is like targeting the users. I'm not going to talk more about it. And you also have the exclude users and group optional preview. Of course, you can create one global policies and exclude the users. Of course, depends on the organization size. And then you have the triggering event. So this triggering event, you have an option to choose a DLP policy as I stated before. If you have already a framed DLP policy, then you can choose that DLP policy, or else like you can use the existing options that's available in the insider risk management policies itself. Like for example, here you see the printing files, creating or copying files to USB, using a browser to upload files to the. These are the common things that the data exploitation happens in any organization, right? So it's good that you have a look at all these stuff and then enable them. And the next part is like you talk about the indicators. The indicators are the one like how much times the event happened. Like for example, sending email with attachments to recipient outside the organization, like total number of activities is 2 per day. This is just a test channel. That's the reason I have selected, but you need to be very choosy and careful on how we are doing that, because if you create one global policy and select this to two, then you're going to get a lot of noise in your environment. So you need to be careful on what are the factors that you need to consider when enabling this. Yeah, and after that, these are things that you need to create in the policy. And after you create the policy, of course, you need to wait 24 hours for the initial things to happen. And after that, I'm just going to show you. This is like one of the alert that happened. So when I click on the alert, you see you get the warning what it was mentioned. You see here the top exfiltration activity. Email sent to external recipient, file upload to the cloud, file copy to a network share. Yeah, these are the things that could happen, right? So when you scroll down, you see, I'm just going to show you an example. File upload to cloud. So if I click on file upload to cloud, you see here, I have uploaded from the endpoint, and then you see the operation is file upload to cloud. Application is Chrome. I have used the Chrome. And then you see the source and the destination domain is exchangquery.mysharepoint.com. Of course, that's another Office 365 domain. So which means like here you see the domain is like a different Office 365 domain, and this one is a different Microsoft 365 domain. So this is very nice, right? This kind of data exfiltration would happen because this is a Microsoft OneDrive.com is a common endpoint. And then, yeah, if there is no option, if your organization is not blocking this common endpoint to access the personal tenant, this common data exfiltration would happen very well. And also you see like 8 events, like files copies to personal cloud storage, and also there is also files copy to network share. Like you see here, there is a file copy to network share, and then the destination file path is this. Yeah, this is my Synology NAS drive. I mounted it, and then I've copied. Of course, the Synology NAS drive, you can also make it available public. Like you can also mount it, and if you copy those data, then you don't have any control on this kind of stuff. So this is very nice. And also, last but not the least, I also want to talk about the adaptive protection. So when we talk about the adaptive protection, I'm going to post a separate video on the adaptive protection in the next series. So here in the adaptive protection is something like a proactive approach, which works in combination with conditional access and data loss prevention. So any kind of such activities happen, you can just simply block the user to accessing that application, which is good, right? Like for example, when a user is trying to do a data exfiltration, let's say copying to OneDrive, then when such action happens, the conditional access policy will trigger in and then will block access to the Office 365 applications. So I will create a separate video in the coming weeks, and we'll talk more about the adaptive protection. Now I wanted to go back to the slide because this is more important, the key takeaways and readiness. Because if you see, this slide outlines 6 essential actions any organization should take to ensure the readiness in implementing analytics and data driven strategies. The first thing is like you need to turn on the analytics, because begin by enabling the analytics capabilities across your systems to gain insights and drive information decision making. That's the important thing. and keep pseudonymous. Ensure that the data is pseudonymized to protect individual identities, and comply with your data privacy regulations. And educate the users. This is very important. Like, always create the education awareness program to make sure that have you have a proper training and awareness program to help user to understand how to use the tools responsibly and also effectively, because most of the data exfiltration happens with lack of information, lack of knowledge on how to use that particular tool. So I highly recommend to create proper education awareness programs, and of course identify the trends, like use analytics to detect patterns and trends that can inform like what kind of the data exfiltration that's happening recently, and what things that you need to do. And also, the last but not the least, collaborate from the beginning from your legal, privacy, and your HR team, because whatever the initiative that you're doing, you need to align with your organization policies and also the regulations, because at the end you're touching the user sensitive data and the user information as well. So you need to have a proper balance. That's very important, because you are going to do a risk management and also the end user privacy. So always partner with your legal, privacy, and HR from the beginning, so that you balance between the privacy and also the risk management. This is the key takeaways as a readiness before onboarding any environment into the Microsoft Insider Risk Management. Because if you go in this phase, like you're also whatever the readiness that you're taking for this Insider Risk Management is going to go in a very good direction, and you can eventually improve them. And the next part is like I wanted to show this as a refinement, especially for the key takeaways. Um, this focuses on the refinement phase of focusing safeguarding your data, as well as the continuous improvement. The first thing is like don't try to solve the entire puzzle, which means like don't put more pressure on your team stating like I want to address every issue at one time. Just focus first on the manageable as well as the high impact areas, which means like pick one policy. Let's see like what are the data exploitation that's happening. File upload to the cloud storage, so you can just pick one or two, like copying files to USB. So these kind of things like you can do. And also like for example, like printing the sensitive files, these kind of things that you can do. These are the important one, like pick the most important ones. And then like you see what are the capabilities that you can expand, because the capabilities I'm talking about is only not about the solution itself, because you need to enhance your tools, the processes, and also the team skills, because this is like you could end up with a more complex cases as well. So how, what are the process you have built, like what are the actions, like what are the procedures, these kind of things, like you need to have it in place before finding it and taking action. And of course you need to have a proper fine tuning the policies, because you need to continuously fine tune the policies, uh, because it's not something like fire and forget. Always you need to look into the recent trends and what are the changes that you need to do in your organization. And the last one is like of course revisit the indicators, because the indicators and triggering thresholds are very important, because you need to regularly reassess them. You need to see like if the correct indicators are set and the triggering events are set, and is it helping me. That's very important. And of course the last one is very important. You need to always create a feedback loop, because the moment when you have a feedback loop, you need to evaluate how the alerts are generated, and then you need to see like how the cases are handled, and you need to see like whatever the actions you are taken is really helping, this solution is really helping you, or I need to do something in a different way. So these are the important key takeaways I wanted to give on the Microsoft Insider Risk Management. We'll talk more about the adaptive protection in the next video. Thank you.